Welcome everyone to the Learning to Birth webinar series where we interview some of the most interesting and inspiring thought leaders about pregnancy and birth worldwide. Today we have with us Caroline Murray. Welcome, Caroline.
Hi Akasha, it's great to be here.
Yeah, it is. Everyone, it's where Caroline is. It's very, very late. So thank you so much for joining us, Caroline. It's almost like we're recreating the natural birth experience of being up in the middle of the night. So everyone, Caroline is a mother of 4 babies via natural birth and author of Natural Birth in a Nutshell, a no-frills guide to pregnancy and birth. And it's full of simple, straightforward tips and advice for natural birth. It contains over 20 real birth stories and gives women the confidence to have their babies naturally and enjoy the pregnancy and birth experience. It sounds like a really great read there.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, well, it came about when I was pregnant with my 4th baby, and I was at a pregnancy yoga class, and my teacher knew it was my 4th baby. There she was, sitting in front in her beautiful white, and we were all there with our big bellies and beautiful class. And I got up to leave at the end of the class, and she came towards me as I reached the door and just said, I'd really like you to do a workshop with me to talk about natural birth to some of my women. So I thought, yeah, I mean, you know, I'd love to do that because I was absolutely passionate about it. This is my 4th baby, and I was planning for natural birth. My other 3 were born at home, 2 of them into water. One of them, the midwife, didn't quite make it because she was so quick. And so I thought this is an awesome opportunity to share what I know with other women and give them that opportunity to have a really fantastic experience of birth that I'd had. So I actually had quite a lot of insomnia during that pregnancy. I was pretty big because he was my 4th. He had descended really early into my pelvis, so it was really uncomfortable for quite a long time. And yeah, so difficult to sleep. So what I used to do, used to get up in the night with my notebook and pen, and so as not to disturb anyone, I go and sit on the loo in the bathroom and start writing this workshop. So although I didn't necessarily feel it at the time, luckily I had quite a lot of insomnia. So it gave me the opportunity to do a lot of writing, and this workshop just turned into a book. As I realized there was so much that I wanted to communicate, but in a very simple, very direct, straightforward way. Kind of take the mystery away from it a bit. So I got to the point where it was more than a workshop and it was a book, and the workshop never happened. Then I spent the next 10 years obviously really busy with motherhood. Yeah, full on. And I decided, I tried to get publishers a couple of times, but it didn't get picked up. And then last year I decided, right, this has got to get done. It's got to get out there. And it was the right time, and a publisher picked up on it. I'm with Authors Place Press in California. And actually they're not in California now, they were, but anyway, it's an American publisher who picked up on it. And so yeah, it was published in March. It's available on Amazon, and I'm really excited. So
that is exciting. We'll have links and pictures to the book and everything in the content below. I guess, do you want to tell us your background, like what led up to being a mum and choosing natural birth?
I hadn't ever really thought about being a mother, to be honest. I was a social worker, I was fairly career driven, and I wasn't one of these girly girls that always thought about getting married and having kids. I was always out in the fields, like playing in mud. And having children didn't really occur to me until I hit 30. And then suddenly it's like, the clock started ticking, and I just thought, no, I really, really want to have some children or have a baby. You know, by this point, it felt quite old, although I can see now it's not, but at the time I felt quite old. So what I started doing was, my life kind of fell apart at that point. I went through a depression. I left my career. I left my partner. I left the city I was living in. So I left friends behind. So kind of razed everything to the ground and started my life again. And with, you know, one of the focuses was that I wanted to have children. And so I really started working a lot with the law of attraction to move towards that. And it was really powerful, and I learned a lot. And I met my husband, and at the time it seemed quite miraculous that I had actually met someone who wanted to have children, because it seemed to be quite, before that, you know, seemed quite hard to achieve. And then so I met him when I was 34, and then I had my first one at 35, and thought, you know, it was like I was at an age when it doesn't seem that old now. Now I'm at the ripe old age of 50. But at the time it felt like, oh God, we're going to have to start trying immediately. It take years. And we were lucky. And it only took a couple of months. And I just remember, you know, we'd moved in together, and I remember when we did the pregnancy test and seeing that word in the little window, and my husband just completely blanched. But yeah, so my first baby was born when I was 35.
Amazing. Why did you choose to have a natural birth?
It's a really strange thing. Someone asked me that the other day, you know, how did you know you wanted to have a natural birth? And it's almost as though it was just in me. I just knew. And I remember years before that, I'd had a conversation with a friend about giving birth, and I could never understand why women were encouraged to lie down to give birth. It just seemed like gravity, like it seemed so obvious to me.
I have lived on a farm all my life. I'm yet to see an animal out in the wild, you know, lie down on its back to give birth. So.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, physiologically, it's completely wrong, because the coccyx goes into the wrong position. And then we have this amazing force called gravity that can help.
Yeah.
So I'd always had that in my mind. And I think I'd worked in a hospital, and it felt like a workplace and not a very safe, comfortable place. And I never felt it was somewhere to do this, to have what seemed to me like could be just a once in a lifetime beautiful experience. And it didn't feel right to do that in a hospital environment.
And did you have home births then as well?
Yes, I had them all at home. And I think the main, the most important factor of that was my midwife. Because at the beginning, I had a certain amount of resistance from my husband and from the family. I think particularly my mother-in-law had had a horrible home birth and really unpleasant experience herself. So I think she was quite scared for me, but I knew that I could do it. And then the midwife started coming, and she was just so reassuring, and she just made me feel that I could do it. She gave me that self-belief that my body was just totally capable of doing this. And then there was one thing that, you know, I remember she'd been visited a couple of times, and then there came a point where I was thinking, well, she's visiting and we're sort of chatting and she's checking my belly size and listening in, and I thought, well, what does she actually do at the birth? So I asked her, and she said, well, I'm just going to sit in the corner and drink coffee. And obviously she was doing a lot more than that, because she was observing, and if she was on hand, if anything, if I had happened or if I'd needed her, and she was reassuring when I needed her. But that was her philosophy, was just to allow it to happen, and that has stuck with me for all my births, that it's about allowing the baby to come through you. You don't really have to do anything but get yourself into that position of feeling so at peace with your birth, that you allow your baby to come through.
Yes, that's a really good observation.
Actually.
Yeah, Leah Bequist, we interviewed her as well, and talking about the Bradley method, and that's pretty much the sum of what she teaches with the Bradley method. Your book, it's got so many birth stories in it, and I guess it's got your birth stories too. And it's about natural birth, but maybe some of the mums listening here, they might really not know what a natural birth is or what it looks like. Do you want to tell us like what a natural birth is in your idea?
Well, to me, it's a vaginal delivery without drugs. I mean, I'm not going to quibble about a bit of gas and air, but
whatever you need there, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah. I think once you start to get into any other interventions, then it's not a natural birth. As far as I'm concerned, because to me, it's about being aware and conscious. And I think if you start having, for example, pethidine, then you're not really experiencing the birth, and being aware of this magnificent happening that's coming through your body.
And from your perspective, because I mean, we are taught that birth can be painful, and it's certainly an experience that is like nothing else. I guess, but you know, it is very common for maybe a first-time mum just to be expected that she's going to take an epidural, so she might not ever experience like what that birth felt like. Do you want to maybe explain what your births felt like so that we can kind of understand?
I mean, they were all different, really. My first one, because it was my first one, I was scared, and I didn't know what was happening to my body or how it was going to work. And I also didn't really believe that I was having a baby. So I remember I'd probably laboured for about 5 hours, and saying to my midwife, Katrina, I don't believe I'm having a baby. So how can you birth a baby if you don't think you're actually having one? So she just said, oh, let's get some of the little baby grows out and get some clothes out and have a look. And it was amazing. She just knew. So that really helped psychologically. And then just at the right moment, she suggested that I get out of the birth pool and go to the loo, because we're comfortable with opening that area on the toilet. It's just, that's what we do when we open our bowels, and it's a very similar sensation in a way, just a bigger poo.
Yeah, exactly. I don't see anyone pooing on their back either.
No, exactly. That would be really weird.
Yeah.
So, and then she knew what she was doing. I thought she was just really suggesting maybe you need to have a wee or something, but she knew. And so once I was on the loo, her head started to come out, and then I sort of waddled back to the birthing room with an Inco pad underneath my relevant parts and got back to the birthing room, and went on all fours, and then started to calm down, and she came out really quickly, and it was amazing. So that was about 6 hours. And then all my waters broke. I was desperate to meet her, and so we went for a curry because that's supposed to help. And my waters actually broke in the Indian restaurant. So that was quite funny. Yeah. You couldn't write a book, could you, with that in it? It would just be too corny. But anyway, it did happen.
It's almost like a movie, like a funny movie, kind of romantic movie.
Luckily it wasn't too gushy, but so we had to go home and we took it as a takeaway. So
you didn't need it after then, did you?
Well, it was quite good. It gave me a bit of energy to keep going. And I didn't actually birth her then. I wasn't really in labour. It took a little while. So that was my first one. I don't know if we've got time to go through all of them. It's
well, I guess, we don't necessarily know in our society, because we don't hear it and we don't see it, like what actually happens in natural birth. You want to maybe some of the things that happen, maybe if there's things that stood out from your other births that you go, oh, this happened. I mean, that's really helpful to know.
Yeah, well, I think with my second baby, she was so much quicker, and I didn't expect that. And for her, we were downstairs in the living room, had 2 midwives there, sitting in the corner drinking coffee, and we were all just sitting around. Well, I wasn't sitting, I was leaning on a kind of cupboard and chatting and laughing, and every now and then I would stop and do some breathing when I have felt a contraction or rushes. And then there came a point where Katrina said, if you want to have that baby in the birth pool, I think you should go up now. And I thought, well, what do you mean? I couldn't believe it. I just thought, well, surely that wasn't labour. And then went upstairs 2 at a time. Very good. Very good tip. And I got into the birth pool, and it wasn't long. And that one, that was my Hannah. She, I remember my midwife saying, "You can reach down and pick her up now." And I was completely spaced out. And I didn't actually know I'd given birth to her.
Oh, wow.
She just slipped out. And she had to tell me a second time. I was so just in the moment, and I scooped her up, and it was just amazing. And then my third baby was halved in time again. And we had the same midwife for all our babies, so she's kind of like one of the family now. We're still in touch, and she helped me with my book. She advised me on some of the more technical stuff. And so for the third one, we called her. It was a really frosty night. She had a bit of a drive to get to us, So she had to scrape the ice in the car. It was in February in London. And then I've started to feel like these pushy feelings. And he said that I could get in the pool. And I remember doing NCT classes. We have the National Childbirth Trust over here, and you can do classes about birth. And they have this candle breath where you go, you sort of, which is supposed to keep stop things from progressing when they feel you're not ready, to slow down so you don't tear. And so I tried that, and I just thought, this is ridiculous, because I'm not in control of this. This baby's just coming. I can't do anything about it. So I just kind of squatted in the pool. I'd been practicing squatting because I hadn't managed that for the last one. It's quite difficult if you're not that bendy. Although I do yoga, I just wasn't that good at squatting. So then just at the same time as Katrina rang the doorbell, the baby's head came out, escaped from my body, and I felt down and said, "She's here." And then Katrina phoned my husband and said, "She's here." And it's so we were really excited to hear from the midwife. So anyway, so that was an hour and a half. And then he was enormous. Like, I was huge. He was a week late. It felt like 2 weeks because the girls had all been a week early. I'd gone for a huge stomp around the countryside to try and jiggle things around a bit. I was just like ready. And I'd had a false labour the week before where Katrina had slept on the sofa. So even with my fourth, you think you're just going to know the signs. And you don't necessarily. People get a little bit self-conscious about that. But even for my fourth baby, I really thought I was in labour, and I wasn't. And so I got up in the middle of the night. I really didn't believe that he was coming, but I got up to go to the loo, got into bed, and just thought, no, he's definitely coming. My waters broke within minutes, and my husband escorted me to the pool. We were pretty experienced by that point. Phoned Katrina and checked that was okay. And I didn't even break into a sweat.
That's incredible.
And he was out in about half an hour. And £9.3. I don't know what that is in kilos. I can't remember. I think it's about 4 point something kilos, 4.4 or something. So yeah, amazing. I've had 4 amazing. Totally blessed. But at the same time, I did a lot of preparation for all of them.
Yeah. And that's the beautiful thing, because with our first, we don't really know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And it can, make choices that then impact our subsequent births. And you are just really lucky that you chose what suited you. And I mean, that's the whole purpose of this webinar series, is that our bodies actually learn how to birth, and you described that pretty accurately, like from birth number 1 to birth number 4, like your body, because you accepted it and you just knew what it, like you and your husband just knew what was happening. The actual trickle out, I mean, when you just relaxed your muscles and accepted it, it just it happens quite naturally and easily and smoothly.
Yeah, it's true. But I do want to say that just because I did it 4 times, it doesn't mean I just went trotting into it all la-di-da, skippy, this is going to be easy. I still go through a process of preparation. And I remember a couple of weeks before I had my son, being in the birth pool, and we used to get them early and have filters and everything, and just be feeling absolutely terrified. And I think that's the thing, it's about acknowledging the fear and finding a way of talking about it and processing it and getting yourself back into that peaceful space of maybe accepting that it's fearful, that you have a fear.
Yeah.
Finding some ways of sort of, yeah, find it ways that it doesn't overtake you.
Like, fear can be really healthy. It can tell us about stuff that we're not aware of and need to look at. You know, I think actually, now you've mentioned that, one of the books that set me on my journey to having like a really good second birth was I think it's like feel the fear and do it anyway. I forget the book. And I don't recommend everything in that book, and I don't recommend jumping off a cliff and not fearing it, you know, but I mean, you know, but it was like, fear is a natural feeling. It's just like, it's just triggering on our body, and then our hips and our pelvis, you know, clench up. And, you know, part of being a mature person and growing up is just, you know, and the confidence that you talk about is to go, oh yeah, that's fear. Oh, okay. And then being okay with the fear, and then it can just do its job. And go,
that's it. Step outside of it and recognize it is.
Yeah, it's just another feeling in our body. You chose natural birth, and you had natural birth. And did you think that there were any benefits to you because of that you might not have had if you'd chosen an epidural or a C-section?
I mean, I can list benefits.
Go through more. Tell us what you did it and what you got out of it.
For me, little things like tea and toast in your own bed after you've given birth. It's like beautiful. Sorry, that makes me feel really like emotional. It's just, it's an experience that you only have so few times. And I think the benefit of being conscious and aware is that you fully experience it. So on those kind of levels. And then if you're in a hospital environment, you're surrounded by fear-inducing equipment, lights, whereas, you know, mammals would not naturally, if you look at the animal kingdom, they wouldn't naturally birth in a space that makes them fearful. They want to be cozy and this is us as humans. We want to be in a cozy, small space that we feel comfortable in. So I would say that was a huge benefit. Having ongoing support from one woman was massive.
You feel safe.
Yeah, safety. Just the pleasure of the experience. Not that there wasn't pain, but I mean, like, why would you choose to do something in a miserable way when you can do it in a joyful way? If there's the option. So, and then physiologically, the recovery period was much quicker. I was up and about. I mean, I didn't rush it at all. I was very, especially after my first baby, I was very strict about resting, and I had people running around me for 2 weeks.
Yeah, good.
But once that was over, I felt really fit and really good. Whereas I think the more intervention you have, the harder it is to recover. And then being psychologically prepared, to preparing for a natural birth. I think even if you can't control everything, sometimes a natural birth isn't what you're destined for. But I think if you've done all the preparation you can, at least you can use what you've learned in your preparation to feel good about your birth experience, whatever's happened. So I think that's a massive benefit. Yeah, it's just having a great sort of, I call it peak experience. I'm a bit of an adventurer. I like to have adventures, mini adventures, and I suppose that's how I like to think of my births.
Beautiful, beautiful. What you've mentioned there, like about the hospital environment, like my second birth I had after reading very early on, probably around the same time as Feel Fear, was Michael O'Donnell's Farmer and the Midwife,
Right.
and Farmer and the Obstetrician, and about what you've just said about animals go to birth in a calm, quiet, secluded place, and so my second birth had to be in a hospital environment, but I did do it similar to you, like in an hour and in a pool of actual labour. I had to fight my way into that labour pool when I got there. I was like, no, really, the baby is coming now, I promise you. And within the pool, because I knew my body, and but I noticed,
and you turned a lion mother at that point.
I knew I was just going to surrender utterly to whatever I was going to experience, and I didn't, I was just going to let it happen. And I remember being in the pool and looking up, and there was, oh my God, this clock, the meanest looking clock you've ever seen. It was this big, and the numbers were in red and big square, like digital red. And I remembered like looking up at it, a contraction, and then I look up again, like, oh, how long was that? And I was like, this is going to keep me in my neocortical brain. And so I actually yelled at the midwives to take it down. I might have had to do it a couple of times, but luckily at that point I had midwives who were like, I think I screamed like, take that fucking clock down now. And they did for me. I hope it never went up again. It probably did, but that was so they could time the contraction. And I was like, this didn't work for me. It was, I don't have one of those at home in bed. Not normally.
But and I think it's not just, that's gonna put you off. And it's that thing in hospital of you're supposed to be labouring according to specific time frames that they have laid down in their guidelines. Well, I'm sorry, but that's not how birth works. It's a natural event, and it's hormonal, and it will happen in its own sweet time. And I think that's another benefit of having a natural birth, especially at home, is that you just labour in your own time. And in fact, it's like anything, like if you're chasing something, it will run away from you.
That's
good. When you're giving birth, if you're chasing the time, you're chasing the birth, it's going to run away. And that's, I think, what women are encouraged to do in hospital, is to chase it and make it happen and push. And if it's not happening, we give you drugs, or rather than just get up and walk around. Whereas at home, you have your own time, or if you're in an open-minded hospital or a birthing centre, you can labour in your own time, and actually it's likely to take less time because you're relaxed about it.
Now you think it will take more, but it actually takes less. I think I'll just, my husband had a really good conversation with me about this, and about when delays happen during the labour, it's often because the mum's got to process something emotionally that will just help her more. And it happens, like the labour stops for a bit, then it comes back on because she's gotten through it. It's a mind-body connection. What support can a mum ask for during the birth? Like, I mean, yours, towards the end, yours sound like, they were happening, fairly on your own. But, before that, what sort of support did you reach for?
The births themselves, for my last two, we were on our own. We didn't have a midwife, but I wouldn't say I did it on my own, because I'd had my midwife births already, She'd taken me through that experience, and also she'd been with me throughout my pregnancies where I birthed on my own. So she was there really, because all her wisdom and support and faith and belief in me was with me at that birth, even though she wasn't physically present.
Yeah, that's
so I think the support, it's different in different parts of the world. I'm not sure what's available in other countries, but I know that in the UK, natural birth is technically should be available to all women. That's the policy. I think in practice, because of staffing issues or culture, it's not always the case that natural birth is supported. It's just in hospital terms, it's much safer and quicker it follows the protocol to not have a natural birth sometimes. So I think the best support that women can have wherever they are and however they can make it happen is to have one woman alongside them throughout their pregnancy and birth. Continuity of care, so that when they come to give birth, they're totally comfortable with being naked with this woman, sharing their most intimate emotional experience, and that they trust her. And it's just, that's how women have birthed for millennia. There has always been a woman by the side. Midwife, the word midwife just means with woman. And it's now become medicalized as birth has become medicalized. And then, so a midwife with you, an older woman who's already been through it, whether, if you have a family member or a friend who you trust and can help you, or a doula is another fantastic option, because it's not a doula is not a medical supporter.
No,
but
they're independent.
She's usually a woman who's been there, had babies herself, and can support you through it and guide you into that process of becoming a mother.
Some of the mums here are probably really interested now in finding out more about natural birth and how they could have one. Like you've said, that your family were resistant and your partner wasn't that supportive to start with. And what if the mother, is feeling like, I just don't know if I can do this? What would you say to her to help her increase her levels of confidence about herself and her body?
I think the most important thing is to recognize that when you first get pregnant, everyone is going to throw all their negative crap at you. Everyone who's had a horrible birth experience will feel like they have to share it with you. I don't know why, because it's not helpful. And
their own trauma, and they're needing to be parented.
Trauma that they need to process, which is of course that's hugely important, and that's a whole other subject. And they feel that because another woman is pregnant, that's the time to do it. But please, it's not. It's so distressing. When I was 12 weeks pregnant with my first baby, I decided I was going to have a home birth. We went to a friend's house for dinner, and there were 2 other couples there. They'd all had their babies before me. They were ahead of me by 2-3 years. And they could not believe I was having a natural birth. They made it completely clear that it was the most stupid decision, and proceeded to tell me all their hideous birth stories. And I couldn't, like eking out all the worst bits of their experience. And it was all I could do to stop from crying at the time. I was so vulnerable. And so anyway, that's how it feels. I think it's just how a lot of women experience it when they're first pregnant. And I think there are several things you can do. One, recognize that that is going to happen. And when someone does that, if you want to be polite, just imagine a beautiful rose bush and switch off. If you're a bit more direct, just say, look, this is making me feel really uncomfortable because I feel quite vulnerable and I want to just fill my head with positivity. And then the final thing is just to fill your head with positive visions of giving birth. And there are so many out there. I mean, when I had my first baby, she's 15 now, my baby, and Facebook wasn't around and the YouTube wasn't around, whereas now if you want to see positive birth stories, it's all over the internet. And that's what I would tell people to do, is find books, find videos, and just fill your head with everything wonderful, positive and amazing about birth, because that's how it can be and how it should be.
That's really great advice, actually, because it is, I mean, it's like any skill or thing that you learn, you learn it through watching others, anything we learn, it's because we've been immersed in it somehow, and we can't, and there's so many ways we can immerse ourselves in natural birth, through books like yours, books like Anna May Gaskin's have a lot of her birth stories in it. She's supported. Then there's so many great movies out there. Really be careful that the movies only have really positive births. Like I've seen some movies that have some positive and some not positive, and I would definitely say like the water birth movies from they're all positive. And then your body just, it's like that mirroring, like your body just like, oh yeah, I can do that. It's just like you would watch people walk and you're like, yeah, I can do that. And it's like, it's just your body kind of mirrors it. It's that body process. And
it's certainly one way to fill yourself with confidence. And that's going to be an element in my online program, is about reassuring mothers to be that this is positive, this is a good thing, to how to tune out from other people's opinions, because you're the one giving birth. And it's connecting with what you want to do and what you feel is right. It's such an important time, and it's a time when you can empower yourself. So I cover that, and I'm pulling together. I'm going to be interviewing some women about their own births who inspire everybody. So
that'd be fantastic. Do you want to tell us, like, from your own experience, what sort of healing happens after a natural birth?
In terms of
what your body goes through.
Your body. I mean, so in a way, I was thinking about it in emotional terms.
Oh, both. It's all good.
Exactly. There is an emotional healing. Vaginally, it can be sore. You've had a massive experience down there, and depending on whether you've had a tear or not. So I think the healing is about really listening to your body. And if you've had a pregnancy where you've listened to your body and taken care of yourself, and that's again another phase in my program, is about how to do that self-care element, and looking after your health and your emotions, so that by the time you're giving birth, you're totally connected to what you need in that moment and what's going to make you feel good. And it's the same with the healing process. I think for my eldest daughter, I remember sitting in buckets of, I think it was like garlic water or something to heal. It was quite extreme, but I didn't do that for any of the others. I didn't really have the time. But it's just a question of looking after yourself, taking it easy, sleeping when you can, not trying to do too much. I think there seems to be an element of competition of who can get out the house the quickest with the new baby. And this time is so precious for mother and baby to bond and to get to know each other, and for the baby to gradually be introduced to the world. And I think that's the healing. And if you listen to what you need and what the baby needs, you will naturally heal very beautifully. And yeah.
That's lovely to hear. I know when you've got older children, it's a little bit hard to have that beautiful baby moon in the house because the other kids need to go places. But if you can have whoever you can to help you get them out there so you can just rest and recover.
Yeah, but even with other children, it's still, they sense that it's special. And that's coming back to the benefits. That's another benefit if you're having a natural birth. It's, well, a home birth, really, taking it kind of one step further, when you have older children, is that you don't have to have any separation anxiety, because there's no going off to hospital, and you can involve your children to whatever degree you want to. I think a lot of people, my children, older ones, weren't at my births because they were still very little, but also I wasn't that comfortable with that. So my body went into labour at night when I felt comfortable. But it meant that they came and met their little brothers and sisters straight away. Like my second daughter always tells this story of how when Joseph was born, my littlest, he's nearly 10 now, and she woke up in the night calling for mummy. Daddy went in and said, there's someone's arrived, Hannah, someone that we'd like you to meet. And brought her in, and here's Joseph, and he's a great big lump. He was like my girls at about 3 months, covered in vernix. So he's all like creamy and smells all like brand new baby. And her dad said, would you like to give your little brother a kiss? And the look on her face is like, oh. So she tells this story now about how you made me kiss his cheesy head. But she's not at all traumatized. She thinks it's quite sweet, really. And then she went back to bed.
Yeah.
We went back to bed, gave birth, midwife came, finished up the cutting of the cord and checking, doing the checks, had tea and toast, off she went, and then we went back to sleep with the baby. And that's how, it doesn't have to be a big drama. That's kind of why it's natural birth in a nutshell, and it's no frills, because it's nothing really.
No, it's beautiful. We make love in our beds.
Yeah.
We have our babies if we can in our beds or our bedrooms, and it's just part of that natural family process.
Yeah.
Of life. It's not meant to be scary or a drama,
Yeah, exactly.
How can the women listening here today connect with you? How can they come and connect?
They can come to Facebook if there's any pregnant mums over 35 listening, because that was my experience. That's who I want to help, because it's there are particular emotions and issues about that. Then I've got a Facebook group, Natural Birth in a Nutshell, Natural Birth Support Group. So you can find me on Facebook as Caroline Murray, as Natural Birth in a Nutshell. My website is www.naturalbirthinanutshell.com. And my book is on Amazon, and that's Natural Birth in a Nutshell, and it's available as a hard copy or an ebook.
We'll put all the links down below so that
Lots,
you can find
lots of ways to find them.
yeah, Caroline's book. Caroline, thank you for being with us. It's been a great chat, and I love to hear directly from you, you know, you're extraordinary and also just completely normal and like beautiful stories about birth. I like to ask a bit of a question before we go, and obviously it's like your mission now in life to, you know, to bring this knowledge about just simple, beautiful, natural labor to the world. Do you want to tell us about why you think, you know, why you think natural birth will kind of like change the world or help the world? Like, what inspires you to do this?
Birthing a baby is not just about birthing a baby. It's about birthing a mother.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if that journey can be started off as a beautiful, peaceful, empowering experience, I know that that can help with your relationship with your children and how you mother and how you feel about being a mother and how you connect with your baby. And it's just a beautiful way of spreading joy and peace.
Beautiful. All right, thank you, Caroline, and have a great sleep over there. Thank you everyone for joining us. Come and stay with us and watch another video, and it's been beautiful, Caroline. Bye-bye.
Bye.